Welcome. For everyone in the viewing audience, I'd like to welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Stephen Lauder, and I'm the search consultant for the Issaquah School District search process. To reach out to as many voices as possible during this important process, the school board has asked that I interview each of the final candidates for your viewing. Please note that there's a link on the district webpage to a survey that will ask for your input on each of the finalists. In this session, we have Dr. Jennifer Bethman. Welcome, Dr. Bethman.
Thank you. Welcome. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Steve. And thanks to everybody for taking a few minutes to listen to me answer a few questions today and talk to you about who I am as a leader.
Sorry.
That's all right. First of all, I want to share with you, and I think an important way to start is by letting you know that I'm a passionate educator and that I feel that providing a high quality education for all of our children it has to be done. And that's my job as a superintendent, is to lead that work and lead that work with all of the district employees and then with the community. I began being a teacher back when I was about 13 years old, and I taught swimming, and I taught swimming to little babies that were 6 months old all the way up to adults who were fearful of water, and just loved seeing the passion that, loved seeing the learner, so the people I was teaching swimming to, just be so excited about it when they learned how to swim and when they were successful, when they made it across the pool for the first time, when a parent's little baby was finally floating on their back successfully. Seeing that child or that adult, whoever the learner may be, reach their goals is just such an exciting thing. And I think that drives the work that I do today. It makes me committed to providing a high quality education for all of our kids. After teaching swimming lessons, I became a teacher and was in the classroom teaching primarily math and music, band classes, for 14 years. And those were great years. Again, loved being in the classroom, loved working with kids, and just thought it was a wonderful place to be. And I still do. I love going back in the classrooms today when I have the opportunity to spend some time working with students. Most recently, having the opportunity to go and substitute in classes. So after teaching for 14 years, I became an assistant principal and then a principal. And then I had the opportunity to open a new high school, and that was quite the experience, opening a high school for 2,000 students. It was a brand new building, putting together stakeholder groups of students and parents and community members and teachers and classified to select the mascot and the colors for the school and what the mission and the vision were, all very important things to do, and work that I reflect on today and see the existing building and some of the systems and structures we put into place still there today. So it teaches me how important it is to be intentional about those works of designing structures and systems to support our students. In my latest position, I've been an assistant superintendent in the Bethel School District for 9 years. And that's allowed me to really work with students from, throughout the district, with a lens of what do we need to do to make sure that that changes need to be made or put into place, that we're communicating correctly throughout the district, that any trends that are moving forward that we need to implement are done successfully. So in doing so, I've had the opportunity to work at all different levels throughout the district. Worked with our teaching and learning department. I've worked with equity and achievement. I'm currently working to design a new high school, very similar to what's being the new high school at Issaquah. Similar budget, similar size, really exciting times. The really neat thing is that I'm making a difference across the district with all of our students. And so I enjoy the work and I continue to do that. It's challenging, but it definitely has prepared me for the position and the superintendent position in Issaquah. So why Issaquah? Well, I feel like, number one, like I just said, my experiences really prepare me well for the position. It prepares me well for a position in a district where there's high quality education, where the community is committed to providing high quality education to students, and you feel it's important. And that is so important to me. So I would love to be able to bring my skills and my experiences and put them to work alongside of you in providing that high quality education. I think I bring with me the understanding of what it means to work in a district that's of 20,000 students. It's not as easy to go out and visit schools as if you're in a small school where there's maybe 8 or 10 schools. So knowing that, that communication is very important, there needs to be some strategic understanding of what our goals are, that we need to work together so that we feel like a community, even though we're a large a place of 20,000 students. And so we have to have a common mission and a common vision. So being in a place or serving in a district where there's the opportunity, well, being in a community that wants to partner in the work to support students in academic preparation, where they can excel and achieve after high school, is a place where I would really like to be and provide my leadership skills to support that work.
Thank you. What are you most proud of in your career?
So there's two things that come to mind when I ask this question. And the first one is in developing a strategic plan, our most recent strategic plan. The intention was really to have it be a plan that was put together by the district, and not just district personnel, but our community. So people throughout the community. So we started, I arranged for a core team to sit down and work for 5.5 days. And that core team consisted of just over 100 people, of which over half of them were parents and community members and students. And then the other half was our classified workers and our teachers and administrators. But everybody came together and sat down at a table to determine what should our goals be. To prepare for that work on the core team, we surveyed all of our students, 3rd grade through 12th grade, to get their input on what it was like to be a student in the district and what they would like to see changed. And then we also talked to focus groups of students, and that was some of the just really memorable conversations that we had with students there. But talking to kids to actually, have them expand upon what they enjoyed about learning and what they would like to see change, and then brought that all back with other data points to our core team for a strategic plan. And we sat down and worked, like I said, to identify those goals that were not just goals of the people sitting in our schools, the people who work in our schools, but our communities coming together to establish those goals. So very intentional method in putting that together. One of the things that came out of that was a thread of equity, and what does equity mean for each one of the goals all the way through the plan. So I was really proud to see that, because that came from our community really feeling like that was important. So that was good. What the other piece of my being proud about the work around the strategic plan is that this strategic plan has not just sat on the shelf and collected dust. This has been a plan that's come to life, that we are working with on a daily basis, that we talk about a lot, that really does drive our decisions. And I think that's really important when we're looking at how we move forward and how we are making sure that we have a direction and a plan that we're implementing. The other area that I would talk about is work that I did with Running Start students. And what we were seeing in our data around Running Start students was that our students of color and our low-income students were not attending Running Start classes like the rest of the students in our population. And so in asking questions, I learned that the kids had a challenge because they couldn't get to the college sites to take Running Start classes. And that meant that they didn't have a car, or they weren't able to take public transportation, which isn't really available in this district. So as a result, I worked with Pierce College and invited them to come down and actually use classrooms in our schools to offer Pierce College classes. And That meant that students come down. They're actually classrooms that are segregated. So they might be in a portable on a campus, or they have exterior doors, so we don't have people walking through our buildings. But the Running Start classes, because they're Running Start, they're open not just to our Running Start students, but to our community. And so our community and Running Start students are now taking classes on our college campus, and they don't have the barrier of trying to get to the college campus, which is the closest one's probably a 30-minute drive. This has resulted in a 50% increase in the number of students of color who are now engaged in our Running Start program. And it's also, we've seen the same increase with low-income students. And we've also seen an overall increase of 50% in the total number of students receiving AAs as a result of this. So, sometimes we need to look differently and think about things through a different lens. And by bringing Running Start to our kids and to our community, it really has benefited our students.
Thank you. As a district leader, how do you manage change and work to get staff and community behind this change?
So I think change is something that we always need to be prepared for. And I'm a visionary leader with an eye towards the future. And with that in mind, change is necessary to move us forward. However, it's so important to remember that change is hard and that it has to be well planned and strategic to really take hold and actually be successful. So the first thing that I do when I'm looking or starting to think that maybe we really need to make a systemic change is review the data, listen to staff, talk with parents, talk with students, maybe talk with graduates to determine if there actually is a need for change and what that change might look like. And then if it does look like, after we've done some initial study, that there is a need for change, bring together a focus group with multiple stakeholders and identify those key tangible goals that will pave the way for bigger change, and make sure that we're on the right track in looking at it with the focus group. And then after that, it's building the systems to support the change. So how are we going to do this? Is there going to need to be professional learning? What's our communication look like out to parents? What do we need to talk to students about? Do we need some new resources? So really looking at what our needs are, what are the systems we need to be putting in place. After that, it's going to be important to measure the impact and celebrate our successes along the way. We need to do that, but we also need to realize that short-term success doesn't mean that we're done. We've got to keep working and going back and building those systems. But change is so important, and if we don't look at what we need to change and we aren't real specific and intentional about our change, we're going to stay in the past and not do what our kids need, which is move towards the future and offer education and educational learning opportunities in different ways. A few examples of where I have implemented change is, first of all, moving sixth graders to the middle school and then ninth graders to the high school. That was a real unnerving move for a lot of parents, and even for students and for our teachers. And so that was quite the process that we took before moving students up into the middle and the high school. Took almost a year and a half of study, bringing a focus group together and learning and studying and bringing some experts in to talk to and ask them questions, having the focus group learn, and then having different times when parents and even staff could come in and talk. But we ultimately did decide to move the sixth grade into the middle school and ninth into the high school. But it was after a lot of work by the focus group and determining what was the structure going to look like when we moved sixth grade in. Was it going to be exactly the same as what the seventh and eighth graders had been experiencing, or were we going to be doing it differently? Same questions asked for ninth grade. And we did set up some entirely different programs for the entry year into each of those levels of education. Another area would be comprehensive sexual health curriculum that we just have been implementing. And about 3 years ago, I started hearing from parents that this was a real concern, that this change was something that they needed to know more about and that they felt very uncomfortable about. And so once again, this was a change that we needed to put some, a real structure in place so that people felt like they knew what was happening, they had an opportunity to have a voice at the table, and they understood when and how the new curriculum would be implemented. So again, we put together, at this point, it was first a team of teachers to look at the curriculum and the standards and align curriculum options with our standards. We selected that. We selected, where we were going to be teaching what, and then we opened up the doors and had a number of different meetings so that our parents could come in and our community could come in and hear about what we were going to be teaching, how we made decisions, and then actually look at our curriculum and make some decisions about, and ask questions about what they thought. At that point, we took the feedback from the community back, and the committee looked at that again and made some more changes prior to our final approval of how we were going to be implementing the comprehensive sexual health curriculum. But it takes a lot of work. With that process, we had over 600 parents that were involved in providing some feedback to us. That's important because they had something to say and we learned from them along the way. So it's really important to have a good process in place. I really feel like change is part of leading the work of the present while simultaneously walking forward to the future. Have to think about that and make sure that we are working with an eye towards what do we need to put in place for our future. Our kids are going to live in the future. They're not going to live in today, and it looks so different for them. Than their future looks so different than what we are, what we've experienced it.
Our district has developed a more culturally competent environment over the past several years. Describe your experience in leading equity work, and please provide any examples of your work surrounding educational equity that has led to improved student outcomes.
Thank you. So the work we've all been doing to provide more culturally competent environment is so important. It's so important for our students. We need to assure that we are prepared to educate all of our students, and that all of our students feel welcomed, comfortable, and excited about the learning, and that they feel comfortable and challenged in the learning environment that we're providing for them. So it's, this work is really important. As a white woman, I feel like that work needs to start with me, and I first need to make sure I understand myself and I continue to learn in this area. But I need to learn about myself, and I need to learn about the district in which I serve. I need to know what the barriers are, what barriers I have are, what my assumptions are, what my blind spots are. And then I need to also start to assess and learn that about our community as well. Because ultimately, as I was saying, we need to create that culturally affirming community where all of our students can come and learn and feel comfortable doing that. We need to remove barriers for our students. So many of our kids have barriers that we years ago didn't even recognize. And so being aware of them and removing them when it's possible, and then dismantling the systems that limit or remove access to opportunity. Another area where I did a lot of work that I've mentioned just a little bit about, but is AP classes. And we had systems in place that really limited or removed the access to opportunity for our kids. And that's not right. So really making sure that we're providing opportunities to all of our students. And then we also need to make sure and see what's invisible to us based on our experiences. We don't have the same, we can't possibly look at everything the same way as some of our kids have experienced it. It's important for us to look beyond and try and see things that might be invisible to us unless we really become intentional about looking at it. A few areas that I've done a lot of work in the area of equity is, first of all, in developing and supporting the implementation of equity teams in all of our schools. We did that in a phased-in process where each of the schools have an equity team of 13 to 18 people, and they get together, and it's about working with them to develop the capacity in the people who have come together to be on that equity team. So we would have, in say our high school, 18 teachers and classified employees who would come together, who would take on the opportunity to build their capacity around being a leader of equity within their building. They learn about cultural responsive practices. And then they can go back and provide professional learning for the staff, and they know where their staff is, and they're able to assess, they're given some tools to assess where their staff are so that they have some ideas about what professional learning they might present. They are also given tools to analyze building systems and structures through an equity lens, so they can decide, are there suggestions that the equity team will make towards changes in the building and the way the building is run that might make it in a more equitable setting for all of the students and staff. An outcome here isn't directly related to student performance. I don't have a direct data point there, but I can tell you we have collected data and see that staff are becoming more aware of their biases, and they're using more culturally responsive teaching practices, which is so important for our kids. So that's the first step. The other thing, the other big example that I share with you, I just recently shared with you, and that was about moving the access point for Running Start students and having access to those courses right on our campuses. That really has provided more equity in the access to Running Start students for all of our students. And as I said, it made a significant difference for our students of color and our low-income students in accessing those programs. So I think education can and should be a great equalizer, and the equity work that we do will assure that education is the equalizer.
Thank you. In our last few minutes, there are two more here. What is effective communication, and how have you implemented it in the past?
So effective communication is definitely something that has to be in place to build trust and relationships. It provides clarity. And I also think when effective communication is in place, it increases engagement. So I think that good communication is two-way. It includes listening as well as sharing of information. And that listening part can actually be more important than the sharing of information sometimes, because I think sometimes the listening is where we miss it. So I think that's a big part of it. It has to be concise. I think effective communication is concise, it's to the point, it's thoughtful and systemic, and it involves providing, collecting feedback, and then closing that, getting back to those with a systematized method of getting back to the feedback that we collect. So how are we going to message back when we've heard a message? What are we going to do to get the responses back to people? Those are all pieces that are so important to put in place. I think it's very important for me that effective communication happens both, email and a phone call. I love phone calls. I would prefer phone calls over emails, but in person, being out at events so that there can be communication, and I get to know people in the community and able to talk. I think that kind of communication is very good, and you learn a lot by being out and about in buildings, talking to teachers, talking to students, talking to parents at events, community members at different community events, that type of thing. But it's very important. A couple of places where I've implemented effective communication, I think the strategic plan that I've talked about earlier is a very good example of pulling people together and really having good, deep conversations about our community and about what's important for our students. And then also, I would say that I work really closely with our director of communications and helping him put together messages. If he doesn't have the information he needs, then the communication that comes from him will not be as strong and is not as productive and informative. So those are two areas where I make sure that communication is out and providing the information to our community that we need.
Thank you. Our last question. What do you anticipate are the two greatest challenges you'll be facing as the next superintendent of the Issaquah School District?
So as a superintendent, I think the two greatest things that are going to face me right away are, first of all, just the continuation in work around the pandemic and the healing that we have to do after these last 2 years. Navigating the post-pandemic world it's been difficult, and it's not going to go away right away. I would love it if it could, but I think we still have a little bit of some challenges that are going to be presented to us. So we need to continue to navigate that. We need to heal. We need to work together. And when I say heal, I think that includes rebuilding some relationships. I think there were a lot of relationships that got damaged over the pandemic. And so it's going out, it's, putting that good communication in place that I was just talking about, to have conversations and start to connect with people differently, and start to learn from our community about what's needed. And the community includes, our staff and our students and our parents, everybody. But we got to work together there. Our teachers have been working really hard, very hard, but we need to close the gaps that our kids are coming to us with. And there's gaps in learning, there's social emotional gaps. We have a lot to work with our kids to move forward. And our teachers need support, our parents need support. This is a place where we have a lot of continued work to do. So I think that's one of the challenging areas that will need additional focus. The second one would be the development of a strong fiscal plan. And I think that's just work that we need to continue to work on. There's been a small drop in enrollment in Issaquah, which does impact finances. And so we need to figure out why students left. Where are they? They probably have not moved. Maybe they have. I haven't dug into the data real deeply, but they probably haven't. So why are they not in the Issaquah schools anymore? And are there things that we can do to bring them back? Maybe there's some programs that they would like. Maybe they're going to be ready to come back now that masks are gone. Maybe we can offer some different opportunities for them. But I think we need to look into that. So that could be one thing that we can do. I think we need to remember that in the enrollment stabilization and the ESSER funds are not going to solve the problems alone. We need to make sure we're making some difficult decisions. There's probably difficult decisions being made this year, but we're going to need to continue those difficult decisions into the future, so that we're developing a strong fiscal plan to assure that we are fiscally sound as a district. So I would say that with challenges come opportunities, and as a superintendent, I'll implement an entry plan that will allow me to get to know some of those challenges at a more in-depth level, and then develop a plan that will help us all move forward, and include input from a lot of people on that plan so that we're moving forward together.
Dr. Jennifer Bethman, thank you. To our audience, thank you for your participation in this important process. Please remember to view all 3 candidates and fill out the survey asking for the strengths and weaknesses of each candidate. Again, Dr. Bethman, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.